star, Ty Burrell, and Tiffany Ward, executive producer.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect.
Thank you.
Ty, your Mr. Peabody sounds a little suave.
That's the first time I'll ever be accused of being suave. Yeah, well, that process of finding the voice was really fun. I mean, huge shoes to fill with. It's Bill Scott, right?
Yes.
Who I think was just an incredible voice actor. I have a disturbingly low voice, which has given me trouble going back to when I was Sherman's age, trying to flirt with girls and sounding like this. So having to find that in my own register and make it my own has been fun, and it's also just fun to play somebody who you're not, which is somebody who is actually sophisticated. So, yeah. Yeah.
Well, Rob, talk about your conversation with Ty getting him to do this. It must have been an interesting process to find the guy to do this iconic voice.
It was. I mean, at first we were thinking, would we have to find someone who just did a Bill Scott impression? Mm-hmm. And, that sort of, I think we quickly came to the conclusion that would be a bad idea because we couldn't really find anyone that did that. And so we went, we sort of liberated our thinking and thought, who is this character and who is this character for today? Because, as Tiffany pointed out, this was something, that was done over 50 years ago. And we wanted to make sure that we really, brought him to life in the right way. And I think that Ty, when we started to listen to Ty's voice, as we do in animation, obviously, before we talk to Ty, we sort of, steal something of him and put it against the character. We found that he kind of embodied all the different aspects we were trying to convey, not just, the intellect or the suave personality, but somehow there was a sort of an underlying warmth that we really, really liked and wanted to bring to this character.
Tiffany, how long did this process take? You say it goes back 10 years now or so?
Yes, it does. Rob came to me wanting to do Mr. Peabody and Sherman, and what better tutelage and caretaker could I have than Rob? So we started it then, and it's just taken a while to get to the correct phase. We wanted it to be perfect, and I think it is.
I'm sure we have questions from the audience. We have a microphone here. If you have a question, you raise your hand, and we'll get the microphone to you. But in the interim, was that a Duran Duran Patrick Nadell poster in Peabody's wall in the apartment? The cover of Rita.
The animators may have sneaked something in there.
Yeah, they may have, an Easter egg.
Yes.
It's a good question. I'll have to go check.
You picked that up.
I go, who's he? Did he play with Duran Duran or something? I mean, it just
very
begs
possible.
all these questions.
He's played with almost everyone.
I'd like to add something to that. When Rob brought me in to show me the storyboards for the apartment, this apartment looks like a house my dad built, exactly. And his favorite building in New York was the Seagram's building. So this is really like high atop the Seagram's building. And it looks exactly like a house he built, which is just eerie in my... So
That's
you can
cool.
see how connected Rob and I were from the beginning, that he saw this without knowing.
Is it a question or is it a microphone? Okay, sure, go ahead.
Couple of questions for Ty. It seems like this would be a history lesson for you. What did you learn in the role? And also, I wanted to ask if you're a dog lover, and do you have a favorite dog?
Oh, okay, I got the second one. What was the first one again?
It seems like it would be a history lesson, voicing this role. What did you learn?
Oh, wow. The history, it is good to brush up on my history. I can't say that, I learned much more than my decent primary school's teachers taught me, but I would say that there is a really cool aspect to this film in that I think it will allow kids to kind of put personalities to these names, to these historical figures, and maybe draw them into learning more about it. I found that really cool, and throughout the whole process, just especially, at least I think education's changed a long time in the 100 years since I went to grade school, but I think it was a pretty dry sort of textbook experience, and even legitimately just watching it for me, it does make me want to go back and learn more about it just from having these like great voice actors put life into those characters. I grew up with tons of dogs. That sounds weird. But I am a huge dog lover. At the moment, we're traveling a lot, and I have 2 young girls, and we are not allowed to have a dog. By that, I'm saying my wife is not allowing us to have a dog because of the travel. But in a few years, we've negotiated, and I'm going to have it. We'll have a dog again in a few years.
What kind of dog will you have?
Well, that's the issue. Is we all want a big dog, and nowadays you unless I found a giant basket to put underneath my seat on the plane, and rode on a throne, I couldn't bring it on the plane. So we'll have to be a little more stationary.
We can go to the next question, please. But I'm glad you brought that question up, because for me, I learned a lot watching those cartoons. I mean, about history, and how important was that to you guys to sort of keep that aspect in, the blending the education along with the entertainment aspect?
Well, I mean, I think you're right. When I was a kid, and I'm sure maybe that's true of everybody here, there was so much that I learned from cartoons, and it was usually snuck in, whether it was, classical music. I remember from great, Bugs Bunny cartoons or Mr. Peabody and Sherman or so many others. And I think that's what's really important ultimately when you're making, stories and movies that do have kids as an audience. It's really important. It was always important to me when I got started working at Disney, which was that you never want to talk down to kids. You never want to, you want to kind of shoot over their heads. A lot of times, people will say, "Oh, they're not going to know this." I said, "Yeah, but how are they going to learn it?" Right? Of course they don't know it. Everybody starts out not knowing something, and they got to hear it from somewhere. And my hope is that they'll see it here and maybe get more interested in it. Because I was the beneficiary of great teachers when I was in elementary school and high school. I had great history teachers, and the reason they were great is because they knew how to bring it to life in a way that made it a story that was compelling, about characters that I was interested in. And when you hear history told in that way, it's fascinating. And it's sad when you hear people think of history as a kind of a lifeless, dead, boring thing, because it's really not. It's every story that we've ever told lives in history.
Here's another question. Yes.
My question's for Tiffany. A lot of us baby boomers remember Peabody and Sherman from way back when, but I'm just wondering, what's the awareness right now of youngsters and even their parents who probably weren't even born when these were first shown on TV, and what is being done to kind of raise the awareness before the film comes out? I guess, will the marketing kick in this Christmas?
Well, I agree. I think that the young kids don't know it. I think a lot of the 30, 40-year-old parents are somewhat aware of it, and of course it's our generation that remembers it better. Yes, our marketing campaign will address that and try to get information out on who Mr. Peabody is and Sherman to have some awareness going into the movie. But I do believe that once you get in the movie, even if you have no awareness of the prior characters, you're going to get everything from what you haven't seen in the movie so far. We'll explain it.
Yeah, I want to ask too about the conception of the sort of that hallway leading to the Wayback Machine, which is kind of awe-inspiring to watch. How did you guys come up with that?
Well, it's interesting because from the very beginning of the process, we were trying to figure out what was the Wayback going to be. Was it going to be the door that Mr. Peabody and Sherman would step through into another dimension or another place and time? And for a variety of reasons, we sort of wanted to do more than that. And so we felt very important that we had to keep that iconic image, that door. And of course, the hallway leading up to it is really just, it's the sort of the threshold that you step into when you're starting to go into that other world. So that was really a lot of fun to design.
This question is for Tiffany and for Rob. Tiffany, what was your greatest concern about having this project and this love of your father's come to the big screen? And Rob, what were some of your primary considerations in bringing Peabody and Sherman to life?
Well, my whole job has been really to preserve my dad's characters as he inspired them, and also to make sure as they move forward into newer development that they stayed pretty true to the characters. So my issues were always the integrity of the characters, and Andrew were clearly on board with keeping that legacy alive. And as you can see, I think they're very true to the original cartoon. So it hasn't been a fight at all. It's just been, wonderful that they have created a new version of Peabody and Sherman, but being kind of the same wholesome characters.
So, and I think
Rob, I'm going to direct you a little bit. Just hold your mic down about right here.
Sorry. Here?
There you
Better?
go.
Okay, sorry. So, I mean, I think for me, growing up watching these cartoons and loving them, it was really a matter of, taking characters that I suppose, believed were real. I never, when I was a kid and I watched them, I didn't really think that it was a cartoon and how did they do this? And I knew it was all kind of a magic trick, but they kind of become part of you. So I think for me, it was just a matter of being true to the spirit of the characters, because the form of it is so entirely different. When they did the original production, it was done in 2D. It was done with limited animation, but still, that was just the form of it. But the characters were what it was all about.
But it was really, too, what I remember about how much story was packed into 6 minutes. And that seems like what you're trying to do, too, is also make as much about the storytelling, because that's what I remember from those things as much as anything else, just being pulled along those stories, and next thing you know, they were over.
That's true. They were, and I think, again, one of the primary considerations that we made in making this film was, we had a big choice to make early on, because we thought, well, this could be a story that takes place in a single historical episode. And so we actually experimented quite a long time with that. But there was something always tugging at us to liberate from that, and to actually get to meet a variety of historical figures. Getting to the point where we actually figured out which ones were going to be in the movie was actually took quite a long time.
Another question. I guess the mic's in the back, yeah.
To that point that you were just making, Rob, when you have a plot device like a time machine, the Wayback Machine, how did you decide what points in history you wanted to visit, where, and how did you decide which points you wanted to use in the film?
Ultimately, what we were looking for were sequences that helped to sort of tell the story in a metaphorical way. We were looking for opportunities of not just going to a particular history, but it had to have some reflection back on the characters and what they were going through throughout the course of the story. But there were so many, and it was so varied. And we have an entire movie cut together of all the places that we are not going. So I would love to be able to play that for you now. Some funny stuff. Like, for example, we went to Nazi Germany, but we're not going there.
Modesto,
Bakersfield. We went there too. We went to all sorts of places. So it was just a process of winnowing out.
Sorry. No, just about right here is fine. You're so excited, obviously. But go ahead.
Oh, no. So ultimately, it was really, a process of winnowing out the ones, that we liked and felt were kind of worked for this particular story.
I guess we have a question right here. Yeah.
Here's a question for Ty. Given that your history is so much in live theater and ensemble TV, how did you find this kind of often hermetic experience of being in a sound studio?
It's very different. It's very different. I think it's partly why I was so excited to do it, because it's such a different experience. We did have one day where Max Charles, the really incredible young actor who plays Sherman, where we were in the studio together, and it was really fun to sort of really get to see his energy in person, and I think it really does inform did inform the performance going forward. But this whole experience, it actually was an incredible thing. About a week ago, I saw what we had of the film, excuse me, sort of pieced together, and it was thrilling to me because I've never had that experience, to be away from the process. You're sort of flying blind, and to come in and see it all come together in ways that I truly had no idea about. I know the script and I know the ideas, but in that sense, it's been really fun because it's a really fun surprise to see the product. The process is very unusual because you basically what we do is I go in with Alex and Rob, and we do a lot of versions of every scene, a lot of different versions, a lot of versions of every line, so that the animators and so that they have plenty to choose from. But I don't know what the result is, and even on our show or in films or whatever, you have a pretty good sense of which scene is the one that's going to be kept. So it's been really fun and an incredibly pleasant surprise.
So how does that inform the spine of your characterization then, knowing that you're doing so many kind of wild lines and figuring out the stories all along?
I think that the root, I basically just stick to the root cause of, the root sort of, not to get too actory, but, the objective of of Peabody. And that sort of, hopefully is informing everything, which is that he's taken in this young boy to do the right thing and sort of sees it as sort of a mentor-protege relationship. But I think over time he realizes that he loves Sherman and is trying to, that's his weakness, is that, is the irrational, and trying to figure out how to be a good dad. And I think that's just sort of underneath everything. So, you can kind of try a million different things, but that sort of being the bedrock. That was my approach anyway.
We have time for one last question. Where's the microphone? No pressure on you, but what do you got?
My parents and my boss were huge fans of the Rocky and Bullwinkle, Fractured Fairy Tales, and Mr. Peabody and Sherman. Are we going to see any shout-outs to the other cartoons that it's connected to, like Rocky and Bullwinkle or Fractured Fairy Tales, in the movie? Or is there anything that you plan to do with those in the future?
Well, there aren't any shout-outs in this movie to Rocky and Bullwinkle or any of the other characters, but we have some wonderful plans in the future. I don't know what I can talk about and what I can't now, but there's some very exciting plans for using the other characters in the future.
Well, let's thank Ty and Rob and Tiffany for coming out
today. Thank you all.
Today.
Thanks for coming.